was assured of it. For if he himself does all of these menial offices, surely it is proof that there was no one else to do them. This gave me a fright, for if there is no one else in the castle, it must have been the Count himself, who was the driver of the coach that brought me here. This is a terrible thought, for if so, what does it mean that he could control the walls, as he did by holding up his hand in silence? How was it that all the people in Mistress and the coach had some terrible fear for me? What meant the giving of the crucifix, of the garlic, of the wild rose, and of the mountain ash? Bless that good woman who hung the crucifix around my neck, for it is a comfort and a strength to me wherever I touch it. It is an odd thing that which I have been taught to regard with disfavor as an adulteress, should in a time of loneliness and trouble be of help. It is that something in the essence of the thing itself, or that in a medium by terrible help in conveying memories of sympathy and comfort. Sometime, if it may be, I must examine this matter and try to make up my mind about it. In the meantime, I must find out all I can about Count Dracula, as it may help me to understand. Tonight he may talk of himself if I turn the conversation that way. But I must be very careful, however, not to awaken the suspicion. Midnight. I had a long talk with the Count. I asked him a few questions on Transylvanian history, and he warmed up to the subject wonderfully. And in speaking of things and people, especially of battles, he spoke as if he had been present for all of them. This he afterward explained by saying that to a boyar, the pride of his house name is his own pride, and their glory is his glory, and the fate is his fate. Whenever he spoke of his house, he always said we, and spoke almost in the plural, like a king speaking. I wish I could put down all that he said exactly as he said it, for to me it was most fascinating. It seemed to have it in a whole history of the country. He grew excited as he spoke, and walked about the room, pulling his great white moustache, and grasping anything on which he laid his hands as though he would crush it by main strength. One thing he said, which I shall put down as nearly as I can, for it tells in his way the story of his race. We the Selects have a right to be proud, for in our veins flows the blood of many brave his own unworthy brother when he had fallen, sold his people to the Turk and brought the shame of slavery on them. Was it not this Dracula, indeed, who inspired, that is, the other of his race who were later age again brought forth with great reverence to the Turkey land, who, when beaten back, came again and again and again, though he had come alone from the bloody field where his troops had been slaughtered, since he knew that he alone could ultimately triumph. They say that he thought only of himself. What good are peasants without a leader? Where ends the war without a brain and a heart to conduct it? Again, when after the battle of Maracas we threw off the Hungarian yoke, we of the Dracula blood were amongst their leaders. Our spirit would not brook that we were not free. Ah, young sir, the Scaskiles and the Dracula, as their hearts applaud the braids, their swords, cannot oppose the record that the mushroom grows like the Habsburgs and the Romanovs can ever reach. The warlike days are over. Blood is too precious a thing these days. Dishonorable peace. The glories of the grand races are as a tale that is told. It was by this time close to morning, and we were off to bed. A memo of this diary seems warmer like the beginning of Arabian Nights, for everything has to break off at Cairo or the ghost of Hamlet's father. May 12th. Let me begin with the facts. Bare, meager facts, verified by books and figures, of which there can be no doubt. I must not confuse them with experiences which I have to rest on my own observation or my memory of them. Last evening when the Count came from his room, he began by asking me questions on legal matters and of doing of certain kinds of business. I spent the day wearily over books, and simply to keep my mind occupied went over some of the matters I had examining in Lincoln's Inn. There was a certain method in the Count's inquiries, so I shall try to put them down in sequence. The knowledge may somehow or sometime be useful to me. First, he asked if a man in England might have 2 solicitors or more. I told him he might have a dozen if he wished, but it would not be wise to have more than 1 solicitor engaged in one transaction, as only one could act at a time, and that to change would be certain militant against his interest. He seemed thoroughly to understand, and went on to ask if there would be any practical difficulty in having 1 man to attend to say to banking, another to look after shipping, and in case local help were needed in a place far remote with a banking solicitor. I asked him to explain more fully so that I may not chance mislead him, so he said, I shall illustrate. Your friend and mine, Mr. Peter Hawkins, from under the shadow of your beautiful cathedral on Exeter, which is far from London, buys from me through your good self in my place at London. Good. Now here let me say frankly, lest you should think it strange that I have sought the services of one so far off from London instead of someone resident there, that my motive was that no local interest might be there to save my wish only. And as one of my London residents might perhaps have a purpose of himself or a friend to serve, I went thus afield to seek my agent, whose labours should only be to my interest. Now suppose I, who have much affairs, wish to ship goods, say, Newcastle or Durham or Hartwich or Dover, might it not be it that I could more easily be done by consigning one in these ports? I had answered that certainly it would be most easy, but that we asleep in this place where he is not. I have placed a crucifix over my head on my bed. I imagine that my rest is thus freer from dreams, and there it shall remain. When he left me, I went to my room. After a little while, not hearing any sound, I came out and went up the stone stair to where I could look towards the south. There was some sense of freedom in that vast expanse, inaccessible though it was to me as compared to the narrow darkness of my courtyard. Looking out at this, I feel like I was indeed in prison, and I seemed to want a breath of fresh air, though it were of night. I am beginning to feel this nocturnal existence tell on me. It is destroying my nerves. I start at my own shadow, and I am full of all sorts of horrible imaginings. God knows that there is a ground for my terrible fear in this accursed place. I look out over the beautiful expanse, bathed in soft yellow moonlight, till it was almost as light as day. In the soft light, the distant hills became melted, and the shadows in the valleys and the gorges of the velvety blackness. The mere beauty seemed to cheer me. There was peace and comfort in every breath I drew. As I leaned from my window, my eye caught something moving in the stone below. Somewhat to my left, where I imagined from the order of the rooms that the window of the court's own room looked out. The window at which I stood was very tall and deep. The stone, mullioned and through weather-worn, was still complete. It was evidently many a day since the case has been there. I drew back behind the stonework and looked carefully out. What I saw was the court's head coming out of the window. I did not see the face, but I knew the man by the neck and the movement of his back and arms. In any case, I could not mistake the hands which I had so many opportunities of studying. I was first interested and somewhat amused, for it was wonderful how small a matter of a whole man slowly emerged from the window. For it was wonderful how small a matter will interest and amuse a man when he is a prisoner. But my very feelings changed to repulsion and terror when I saw the whole man slowly emerge from the window and began to crawl down the castle wall over that dreadful abyss, face down, with his cloak spreading out around him like great wings. At first I could not believe my eyes. I thought it were some trick of the moonlight, some weird effect of shadow, but I kept looking, and it could be no delusion. I saw the very fingers and toes grasp the corners of the stones worn clear of the mortar by the stress of years, and by thus used every projection inequality moved downwards with considerable speed, just as a lizard moves along a wall. What manner of a man is this, or what manner of creature is it in that semblance of a man? I feel the dread of this horrible place overpowering me. I'm in fear, an awful fear, and there is no escape for me. I am encompassed about with terrors that I dare not think of. Once more I have seen the Count go out in lizard fashion. He moved downwards in a sidelong way, some 100 feet down, and a good deal to the left. He vanished into some hole or window. When his head had disappeared, I leaned out, try and see more, but without avail. The distance was too great to allow a proper angle of sight. I knew he had left the castle now, and thought to use the opportunity to explore more than I had dared to do as yet. I went back to the room, and taking a lamp, tried all the doors. They were all locked, as I expected, and the locks were comparatively new. But I went down the stone stairs to the hall where I had entered originally. I found I could pull back the bolts easily enough and unlock the great chain, but the door was locked and the key was gone. That key must be in the Count's room. I must watch, should his door be unlocked, so that I may get it and escape. I went on to make a thorough examination of the various stairs and passages, and tried the doors that opened from them. One or two small rooms near the hall were open, but there was nothing to see in them except old furniture, dusty with age and moth-eaten. At last, however, I found one door at the top of the stairway which, though it seemed locked, gave a little under pressure. I tried it harder and found that it was not really locked, but the resistance came from the fact that the hinges had fallen somewhat, and the heavy door rested on the floor. Here was an opportunity which I might not have again, so I exerted myself with many efforts and forced it back so I could enter. I was now in a wing of the castle further to the right than the rooms. I knew in a story lower down. From the windows I could see that the suite of the rooms lay along the south of the castle, the windows at the end of the room looking out both west and south. On the latter side, as well as the former, there was a great precipice. The castle was built on a corner of a great rock, so that on three sides it was quite impregnable. The great windows were placed here sling or bow or cauldron could not reach, and consequently light and comfort, impossible to a position which had been guarded, was secured. To the west was a great valley, and then rising far away, great jagged mountains, vastness rising peak on peak. The sheer rock studded with a mountain ash and thorn, whose roots clung in cracks and crevices, crannies on stone. This was evidently the portion of the castle occupied by the ladies in bygone days, for the furniture had a more air of comfort than any that I have seen. The windows were curtainless, and the yellow moonlight flooded into the diamond panels enabled one to see even colors. Whilst it softened the wreath of dust which lay all over the disguised in some measure of ravages of time and the month. My lamp seemed to be of little effect in the brilliant moonlight, but I was glad to have it with me, for there was a dread loneliness in the place which chilled my heart and made my nerves tremble. Still, it was far better than living alone in the rooms which I had come to hate. From my presence at the Count, and after trying a little to school my nerves, I found soft quietude come over me. Here I am sitting at the little oak table where the old times, possibly some fair ladies sat to pen, with much thought and many blushes her ill-spent lover letter, writing in my diary in shorthand all the happenings since I closed at last. It is the 19th century up to date with vengeance, and yet, unless my senses deceive me, the old centuries had and have powers of their own which mere modern cannot kill. Later, the morning of May 16th. God preserve my sanity, for to this I am reduced. Safety and assurance of safety are things of the past. Whilst I live here, there is but one thing to hope for, that I may not go mad, if indeed I be not mad already. If I be sane, then I surely it is maddening to think that of all the foul things that lurk in this hateful place, the Count is the last dreadful to me. That him alone I can look for safety, even though this be the only whilst I serve his purpose. Great God, merciful God, let me be calm, for out of the way lies madness indeed. I begin to get a new light on certain things which have puzzled me. Up has this meant that I put it down, etc. For now, feeling as though my own brain unhinged, or as if the shock had come which must end its undoing, I turned to my diary for repose. The habit of entering acutely must help soothe me. The Count's mysterious warning frightened me at a time. It frightens me more now when I think of it, for in the future he has a fearful hold upon me. I shall fear to doubt what he may say. When I had written in my diary, and fortunately replaced my book and pen in my pocket, I felt sleepy. The Count's warning came into my mind, but I took pleasure in disobeying it. The sense of sleep was upon me, and with its obscenity which sleep brings as an outsider. The soft moonlight soothed, and the wide expanse without a grave sense of freedom which refreshed me. I determined to not return tonight to the gloom-haunted rooms, but to sleep here where of old ladies had sat and sung and lived sweet lives, whilst their gentle breasts were sad with their menfolk away. I drew a great couch out of its place near the corner so that I may lay. I could look at the lovely view to the east and south, and unthinking of caring of the dust, composed myself for sleep. I suppose I must have fallen asleep. I hope so, but I fear that for all that followed was startlingly real. So real that now, sitting here in the broad full sunlight of the morning, I cannot at least believe that it was all sleep. I was not alone. The room was the same, unchanged in any way since I came to it. I could see along the floor in the brilliant moonlight my own footsteps, marked where I had disturbed the long accumulation of dust. In the moonlight opposite me were 3 young women, ladies by their dresses and manner. I thought it all the time I must be dreaming when I saw them, for through the moonlight was behind them, and there were no shadow on the floor. They came close to me and looked at me for some time, and then whispered together. 2 were dark and had high, aquiline noses, like the Count, and great, dark, piercing eyes that seemed almost red when contrasted with the pale yellow of the moon. The other was fair as can be, and with great wavy masses of golden hair, and eyes like pale sapphires. I seemed somehow to know her face, and to know it in connection with some dreamy fear. But I could not recollect at the moment how or where. All 3 had brilliant white teeth that shone like pearls against the ruby of the voluptuous lips. There was something about them that made me uneasy, some longing and same time some deadly fear. I felt in my heart a wicked burning desire that they would kiss me with those red lips. It is not good to note this down, lest some day it should meet Mina's eyes and cause her pain, but it is the truth. They whispered together, and then they all 3 laughed, such a silvery, musical laugh, but as hard as though the sound never could come through the softness of human lips. It was the intolerable, tingling sweetness of water glass when played on by cunning hands. The fair girl shook her head, and the other 2 urged her on. One said, "Go on, you're the first, and we shall follow. Yours is the right to begin." The other added, "He is young and strong, and there are kisses for us all." I lay quiet, looking out under my eyelashes in agony and delightful anticipation. The fair girl advanced and bent over me till I could feel the movement of her breath upon me. Sweet it was, in one sense honey sweet, and scent the as one smells blood. I was afraid to raise my eyelids, but looked out and saw perfectly under the lashes. The girl went on her knees and bent over me, simply gloating. There was a deliberate repulsiveness which was both thrilling and repulsive, and as she arched her neck, she actually licked her lips like an animal till I could see in the moonlight the moisture shining on the scarlet lips, the red tongue as it lapped the white, sharp teeth. Lower and lower went her head, and her lips went below the range of my mouth and chin, and seemed about to fasten onto my throat. Then she paused. I could hear the churning sound of her tongue as it licked her teeth and lips. I could feel the hot breath on my neck, and the skin of my throat began to tingle as one's flesh does when the hand is tickled. It approached nearer and nearer. I could feel the soft shivering touch of the lips, the supersensitive skin of my throat, and the hard dents of two sharp teeth, just touching and pausing there. I closed my eyes in glorious ecstasy and waited with bated heart. But at that instant another sensation swept through me, quick as lightning. I was conscious of the presence of the Count, and that his being as if it lapped a storm of fury. My eyes opened involuntarily. I saw his strong hand grasp the slender neck of the fair woman with a giant's power, draw it back, and the blue eyes transformed to the fury, and the white teeth changed, champing with rage, and the fair cheeks blazed red with passion. But the Count, never did I imagine so much wrath and fury, even to the demons of the pit. His eyes were positively blazing. The red light in them was lurid as if the flames of the hellfire blazed beneath them. His face was deathly pale, the lines on it were hard like drawn wires. The thick eyebrows that met over the nose now seemed like heaving bar of white-hot metal. With a fierce sweep of his arm, he hurled the woman from him, and then motioned to the others as though he were beating them back. It was with the same imperious gesture that I had seen used to wolves, in a voice which, though low and almost a whisper, seemed to cut through the air and ring around the room. He said, "How dare you touch him, any of you? How dare you cast eyes on him when I had forbidden it? Back, I tell you all, this man belongs to me. Beware how you meddle with him, or you'll have to deal with me." The fair girl, with a laugh of rapidity, turned to answer him. "You yourself never loved. You never love." And this the other woman joined in. Such a mirthless, hard, soulless laughter rang through the room that it almost made me faint here. It seemed like the pleasure of fiends. Then the Count turned, after looking at my face attentively, and said in a soft whisper, "Yes, I can love. You yourself can tell it from the past, is it not so? Well, now I promise you that when I am done with him, you shall kiss him at your will. Now go, I must awaken him, for there is work to be done." "Are we to have nothing tonight?" said one of them, with a low laugh, as she pointed to the bag which was thrown upon the floor, which moved as though something living within it. With the answer, he nodded his head. One of the women jumped forward and opened it. If my ears had not deceived me, there was a gasp and a low wail, as if half-smothered child. The woman closed around whilst I was aghast with horror, but I looked, they disappeared, and with them the dreadful bag. There was no door near them, and they could not have passed me without my noticing. They simply seemed to fade. The rays of the moon sank down unconscious. And thus ends chapter